Welcome back, everyone, to our series on current developments in AI and its legal implications. Today, we want to talk about one of two recent decisions of the District Court of the Northern District of California, which had to decide on the fair use exception in the context of training a generative AI model. So I'm joined again by my colleague Lauren, an expert in IP litigation from Washington, D.C., and welcome back, Lauren.
Thank you, Morten, and thank you for having me back.
So last time we spoke about the Ross Intelligence decision from the District Court of Delaware, in which the court decided that the training of the challenged AI model on copyrighted legal head notes was not fair use. Today, we would like to take a look at the decision in the case Bartz versus Anthropic, which appears to have reached a different conclusion. So can you give us an overview about the differences between the two cases?
Happy to. Probably the most significant difference, and one which appears to be driving the difference in outcome, at least in part, is that the AI model at issue in the Anthropic case was generative, meaning it can produce new content, whereas the Ross Intelligence decision involved non-generative artificial intelligence. Most of the popular AI models right now, including large language models, image generators, and those behind chatbots, for reference, are generative models. Another big difference is the focus of the Anthropic decision on how the training data at issue was obtained, and which was a significant consideration in that court's analysis.
Very interesting. Before we get further into the decision, let's take a look at the facts of this case. Anthropic, the defendant in this case, is one of the largest developers of large language models and is operating the popular LLM Claude. To acquire the large amounts of data needed to train its models, Anthropic purchased millions of physical books, scanned and digitized them, and discarded the physical versions. And this process is called destructive scanning. And Anthropic also gathered millions of books from downloading pirated versions from the internet. So the plaintiffs are authors of some of those books, claiming that their copyrights have been infringed by Anthropic. With the facts now being clear, let's do a quick recap on what fair use is and why it is so relevant in the context of AI training.
So fair use is a narrow defense under U.S. copyright law that permits the limited use of copyrighted material without requiring permission from the rights holder, but only under certain circumstances. Whether a use qualifies as fair is a highly fact-intensive inquiry that considers four factors: the purpose and character of the use, particularly whether that use is transformative, whether it serves a commercial or nonprofit or educational aim, the nature of the copyrighted work, with factual or published content more likely to support fair use than highly creative or unpublished material, for example, the amount and substantiality of the portion used, both in terms of the quantity and significance of what has been copied, and finally, the effect of the use on the potential market or value of the original work. Now, what's important to understand is that no factor in this analysis is dispositive, and there are no bright line rules for weighing those factors. Each case is analyzed on its own merits and fact pattern. What we're seeing in the context of AI development, and have seen in this recent Anthropic case, is that model developers often argue that their use of copyrighted content for training purposes is transformative and does not replace the original work in the market. As a result, they claim it falls within the boundaries of fair use. And that's the background for the Anthropic decision.
So, did the court in the Anthropic case find that the defendant could rely on fair use for training its AI models in this case?
It did under specific conditions. The court ruled that Anthropic's use of legally purchased books to train their Claude model was, quote, quintessentially transformative and thus fair, relying heavily on the model's generation of new material and the lack of infringing expression in its output. The court stated that the AI model wasn't copying or imitating the content of the books, but was instead learning from them to generate entirely new output. In this way, the court compared the training process to a student reading books in order to become a better writer himself, and not simply to reproduce the original content. So for the legally acquired materials, The court said yes, fair use applied.
And what about the pirated books? It sounds like the court's view on those was different.
The court did see the pirated content differently. It found that for the pirated copies, all the factors pointed against fair use. Unlike legally purchased books, those copies were illegally acquired and kept in a centralized digital library, according to plaintiffs, even after the defendant decided not to use them for training. The court emphasized that building a permanent library with unauthorized copies was not transformative and directly undermined the value for the original works. In this way, though, it's important to understand that the court's decision on this issue didn't revolve around training on pirated books per se. Rather, it focused on the creation and retention of pirated copies that were not used for training purposes. In fact, its actual holding as it relates to those pirated copies was to deny summary judgment for Anthropic that the pirated copies must be treated as training copies. So what happens now is that the questions with respect to those pirated copies will proceed towards trial, where they'll be decided.
Yeah. So after weighing all the factors, the court granted Anthropic's motion for summary judgment on fair use regarding the training of the AI models on legally acquired materials, as well as the digitalization of legally purchased books. The court also stated that AI technology is among the most transformative technologies many of us will see in our lifetimes. So regarding the downloaded copies of the pirated books, I understand that the court denied summary judgment and ordered a trial on this part. The court came to the conclusion that every factor points against fair use on this and that the consequences will have to be decided in trial. So, Lauren, what should the viewers take away from the decision and what can be expected for future developments in this area?
I would say there are two main points coming out of the Anthropic decision that I think we're likely to see reverberate through other pending cases. First, the court noted that its holding applies where the works used to train models were purchased or otherwise accessed lawfully. In this way, the opinion suggests that fair use does not require model developers to purchase their training content as long as they access it lawfully, leaving open the possibility that content obtained through methods such as lawful web scraping could also qualify as fair use under the court's analysis and a similar fact pattern. Second, the court was clear that its holding only applies where the training process at issue does not generate infringing outputs or result in the provision of infringing copies to end users. The court was explicit that if that were not so, this would be a different case, in its own words. These points really underscore the fact-intensive nature of the fair use inquiry and the reality that we may very well see different fair use outcomes across the different pending fact patterns. And these outcomes may vary not just based on factual circumstances, but also the weight accorded to each fair use factor, as we've now seen highlighted by the second fair use decision coming out of the same judicial district.
Thank you very much, Lauren. It was great to have you on this video today. If you would like to learn more about AI and its legal implications, please feel free to get in touch with us and also make sure you subscribe and to watch our latest news on digital transformation and the case law in AI. Thank you for watching.